Kirk Kaplan on the ones and twos. John Ashmead is on the video here. We're live at Mohegan Sun, getting ready for the CT Sun versus the Indiana Fever later tonight. And it is hopping and popping. We got a live band behind us. But somebody just got off an airplane, just landed in Georgia, getting ready for UConn versus Georgia State tomorrow. Adam Giardino, he'll be patrolling the sidelines. He does so much work for Learfield and UConn sports. Adam, how are you, buddy?
Hey, Adam.
All right. No, great flight, easy flight. Took an hour 55 once we got in the air. So, yeah, the team's down here and heading to the stadium right now for a walkthrough. We're hanging back at the hotel, and UConn's 4-point underdogs heading into tomorrow against Georgia State.
Went up.
What is, like, the vibe right now coming off the loss from NC State, not only in the post game, heard a lot of talk from Durante Jones from the defense's standpoint, just how disappointed their performance was or how they were disappointed in their own performance, but also just not getting the passing going again in game one we saw all year last year. Going into this Georgia State game, is it more of like an attitude where enough is enough already with this offense, or is it an attitude of this is just the game ahead of us, this is just another week?
Yeah, I think that in respect to the offense, remember last year, and it was more extreme last year with those games against Syracuse, NC State, and Michigan 3 straight weeks where admittedly the offense was holding things back. They weren't revealing their hand, and it was a little unusual because it was a 3-point game in the second half, but it felt almost as if the offense was just not trying to do too much, especially with a first-game starter at the FBS level in Fagnon. So I'm interested to see. If the offense comes out tomorrow and looks the same as it did against NC State, I will be concerned, absolutely. This is a Georgia State defense that allowed 35 points and trailed in the second half to the University of Rhode Island. So I think that having seen that and seeing those kind of numbers, you don't want to set a hard expectation, but I think 30-plus points, unless they win 28-0, I think 30-plus points is a must tomorrow in order to feel good about the offense based on what Georgia State allowed against the Rams.
UConn was great last year at home, 5-1, but they struggled on the road. Is that another thing that they're going to try to address, especially Jim Mora?
Funny that you say that, just because Jim Mora was talking. He was asked specifically about being on the road and his time as a player, as a coach. He said, when I was in the NFL, Arrowhead and Lambeau Field were the two big ones that popped to mind. He said that the crowd in the USC-UCLA matchup, no matter where it was, either at the Coliseum, wherever it was that game was big. UCLA played at Texas A&M in the 12th man. He said was huge. And he also gave a really, and I know this isn't totally answering your question, but it was a fun story from the press conference this week where he said as a player at LSU, he pulled up, the fans are rocking the bus as we get off. He said there might have been maybe just enough shoulder width of a tunnel for us to get out between these fans. The sky just that night was orange. Mike the Tiger's being prodded by who knows what. And he's roaring as you walk into the stadium. They're chanting Tiger Bait as you walk in.
Yeah.
So he said that LSU, from a college perspective, is the rowdiest thing that he's ever felt.
Wow.
And again, that was when he was a player at University of Washington, and the Huskies, the Washington Huskies, were a top 5 team at the time. So anyway, fast forward to 2023, Georgia State, UConn on the road at a reconfigured Major League Baseball stadium, formerly Turner Field. It probably won't be that, but I think that UConn needs to learn to win on the road. I think last year that game at Ball State where, again, last year Ball State, they had a great running back that wore down UConn in the second half. I think Georgia State has a similar guy in Marcus Carroll who ran for 184 yards last week, and 90 of those yards came in the fourth quarter. So that's something that I'm going to be watching is what does Carroll look like against UConn on the road, the crowd getting behind him. We've seen photos of what this field looks like under the lights, and it's really beautiful. It's Center Park Stadium, again, formerly known as Turner Field, and it's a really beautiful setup. They've converted it full time from baseball to football, so it doesn't quite have that Candlestick Park type feel to it. It's a football stadium, and I'll be eager to see what the environment is like. This is the Georgia State team that didn't make a bowl game last year. They had made 3 straight bowl games prior to that, so they're 1-0, and they're looking to go 2-0 tomorrow.
I think they've got two grown men in the backfield. You mentioned one, running back Marcus Carroll, who is a senior, and then also the quarterback Darren Granger, who is a senior as well. Not only did he have that 130-plus game, he had 3 touchdowns to go with it and was pretty much the centerpiece of the offense. How are they able to get him so free? What is kind of the scheme that they use? Because also Granger has some rushing yards as well in that Rhode Island game. Is it a lot of RPO? Is it a lot of ISO? Like, what is it about Georgia State that allows them to be so successful running the football?
Yeah, it's honestly, I attribute it more to the skill players than the offensive line, which is a good sign for UConn. This is a defensive line group that I think can overpower most of their opponents this year. And we saw that, frankly, last week.
Yeah.
We did see Tracy Yates and Dale Moncordine and Sequoia McDuffie, Jelani Stafford, Eric Watts, Colin McCarthy. Mike Crispino was calling their names a ton. They just were giving up chunk yards after contact in the backfield. And, you know, it goes in the book as 4 yards for a net gain. And we talked about this last week, but the difference between -3 and a sack and +4 and, you know, 2nd and 6, that's big. Emotionally, it's big in terms of strategically how things move forward. So for Georgia State, I think that first quarter, getting the quarterback down is just going to be huge. That Granger is 6'4", 225 pounds. He's actually a little bit bigger than NC State's guy was last week. So, you know, in terms of the ability to shrug off a shoulder tackle in the backfield, Granger's a little bit more capable. So that's something that was a point of emphasis all week. And that's more where Granger's stuff came from. It was watching last week's game over. It was URI not being able to secure him in the backfield. So I think it's much more of a straightforward offense than maybe the stat profile indicates. But this also is a Georgia State team that year over year they are predicated on running the football. From 2019 to 2022, 220 rushing yards per game. And in that time, that's 7th in the country. And that's behind Air Force, Army, Navy, who that's all they do is run the football. So really, Georgia State has the 4th highest rushing yards per game over the last 4 years out of teams that try to have more of a balanced attack. They're only trailing Ole Miss, App State, and Ohio State.
Wow.
So that's, I think that's a good thing for UConn's defense. I think they do well with stopping the run. And I think that especially first down, keeping them to 2nd and 8 and shorter, that's going to be huge tomorrow to make sure that Granger then can't walk up to the line of scrimmage on 2nd down and feel like he's got the wind at his back.
Yeah, UConn had a lot of trouble, Adam, you know, bottling up the quarterback in that first game against NC State. I mean, that kid was able to run for almost 100 yards. Let me ask you about Victor Rosa. Is he going to start the game at running back, and is he going to get more than 9 carries in this one?
Well, Jim Mora addressed that as well, where the size of UConn's 3 running backs, it really works best when they're getting 10 carries apiece. I think that, you know, for Devontae Houston, Victor Rosa, and Brian Bruton, 170. Victor Rosa's listed at 205 pounds. I don't think so. And Brian Bruton at 175 pounds. I mean, so those are your 3 running backs. Rosa, again, generously, 5'11", 205. And, I mean, he had great breakaway speed in that 71-yard touchdown run that he was flagged for after in the celebration. But think about what you just said, where, okay, 9 carries for almost 100 yards, but subtract the 71-yard touchdown, and you're talking 8 carries for 20-something yards. So, you know, good numbers, but it obviously helped. You know, Victor Rosa broke off 4 20-yard runs instead of 1 71-yard run. I'd actually like the idea of putting him out there for 20 carries a little bit more. He had 1 great carry, but I don't think him breaking a 71-yarder is anything that Devontae Houston, Brian Bruton wouldn't have been able to do on a similar play. All 3 of them have great speed. They have great instincts, and I think keeping the 3 of them fresh is important because we saw late in the year last year what it looked like for UConn, where they had to become a little more one-dimensional in the backfield. So at this stage, week 2, keeping Houston, Rosa, and Bruton, all of them fresh and healthy. I think we saw stretches, especially with Houston in the second quarter, where they rode him for an entire drive because he was picking up 4 or 5 yards at a time, and it was like, all right, let's keep him on the field. He's got the hot hand. But then the next drive, they mixed it up, and they put Rosa in there. So I think Jim is okay. Jim Moore is comfortable riding hot hands on specific drives, but then just kind of swapping them out on the next drive unless he's really being given a reason not to.
What has Coach said about the passing game? I mean, Joe Fagnano, I don't know. It looked great in the first series, but I try to tell everybody those are scripted series. Like, he knew exactly.
First 15 plays.
First 15 plays are already in the books. But it just felt like, again, we can't stretch the field with the deep ball. It was a struggle, basically, to find open receivers. He looked great in the first half and then kind of settled down or, just basically didn't play very well in the second half. What did Coach say about the passing game, and what does he expect this week against Georgia State?
Well, okay. When asked about it in the midweek, he had an interesting response, and he said, well, a receiver dropped 5 balls. And to me, in the moment of the game and even in the aftermath of the game, that didn't seem to be the concern. I didn't come away from that game thinking, boy, if the receivers had just held on to the ball, Fagnano would have been really aided in his aerial attack. And now, so that means that they weren't dropping 25-yard balls downfield that would have been momentum-shifting plays. But to Jim's point, 1st and 10, you make a 6-yard catch, and 2nd and 4 changes things a lot with what you can do on the next couple of plays. So we'll concede that, but I'm more with what you're asking and the fact that, hey, is this team going to go downfield, and who is that target? Who are those targets?
Right.
I think that based on what we saw against NC State, there was nobody that jumped out of the page at me and thought, okay, this can be that downfield guy. And I think knowing what we know, the answer is probably Cam Ross and probably Kevin Clarcius, who's 6'2" and seems to have pretty good size. So those are the 2 guys in my mind where if we're thinking who's going to go down and get a 20-yard catch, 40-yard catch, who's that going to be? It's probably one of those 2 guys. But, yeah, I think I said it on the very first question where it's like, all right, so if we come out of tomorrow night feeling like we saw a similar offense to what UConn put out against NC State, then I think there's a little bit more of the drawing board that needs to be combed through to figure out maybe a way to be more explosive and more dynamic.
Hey, I look at some of the games that they lost last year. This team, Georgia State, lost to Marshall 28-23.
Last game of the season.
We lost to Marshall 28-14.
Yeah.
I think we could stay on the same football field with this team. Do you get that feeling?
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, I threw out, it was 4-point underdogs. I've seen anywhere between 3, 3.5, 4, so somewhere in that pocket.
All right, let me ask that a different way.
Yeah.
What will be going right for UConn for you to think that they will win this football game in the first half?
Defense, absolutely. Just this is a defensive unit that we talked to Durante Jones. I actually don't think we said Jackson Mitchell's name yet in this call. So this conversation, and he's massive, 15 tackles. He continues to ascend the all-time tackles career list. He's going to be 8th in the list after this week's game in program history. But it's that defensive line. Just being able to control the line of scrimmage, and UConn's got a group that's experienced that they can do this. To me, that's going into – if you go into halftime and Georgia State's nowhere near 100 yards rushing, you feel really good about what UConn's chances are in the second half. I think that this game's going to be won with defense, as most games are with UConn, going to be won with defense until they show that 30, 35 points is not out of the question for this offense. And so I think you got to win a game in the 20s, and but UConn's more than capable of doing that.
5:30 pregame, 7 o'clock kickoff, 97.9 ESPN Hartford, 1300 ESPN New Haven. Adam Giardino on the line with us right now. He'll be walking around the sidelines during this game, and I know you're always keen on the weather. I heard it was a blackout for Georgia State, which I think that is
a little hot.
Dumbest idea.
Yeah, I would have it white out, man.
Welcome that for all the students.
Hot
to
Atlanta,
wear
man.
The
worst
black
time of year
stuff
there.
just to get soaked into
Ew.
that sun. Do you have a weather report? How hot is it supposed to be on the field?
Well, how humid?
Yeah. If you know
humidity
that's
down there.
Kickoff temp supposed to be 74 degrees.
Oh,
and
wow. That's very
right.
favorable.
Esteemed Wayne Norman said that's going to be right around the 15th hottest kickoff temp in the history of UConn football. And it'll be one of the hotter night games at kickoff in UConn history. A couple of years ago, 90 degrees at Fresno State. paled in comparison only to a game in the 80s against Rutgers, which was 91. The game against Fresno was 90. So we're not going to be anywhere close to that. But out there in the high desert, it was dry. And like you said, getting off the bus even right now and walking into the hotel, it was thick and sticky. And it's thankful that it is a night game. You kind of go down there and you think, oh man, why is it why did they schedule this for a noon game? And then you realize, oh, it's Atlanta in early September, and that's exactly why they didn't schedule this for a noon game. It's not a nationally televised game, so can't wait to have people listening in. But it's going to be a warm one.
I don't know if we lost them there. We still there?
Come back.
Cramp timeouts. We got guys getting stretched out in the middle of the field on their backs, hamstrings, calves, all that good stuff. I imagine we're going to be seeing a lot of that tomorrow night.
Hey, here's the thing about Fignano. He's not going to have trouble loosening up in that weather.
No.
His arm's going to be ready to go. Dude, I used to throw 3 pitches, and I was throwing hard. So Atlanta's one of my favorite places to throw. So
really?
He should feel great.
I wonder why that is. Is it the humidity?
The humidity.
A little different than Burlington, Vermont. I saw that.
Oh, you saw my card, huh? I love it.
Oh, man, you look good. You look good back then.
Dude, I was 200 pounds back in 1986.
Wow.
Haven't seen those days in a while, Adam.
I was just going to say, long time ago.
Yeah.
Adam, have fun, man. Enjoy Atlanta.
Thank you, sir.
I appreciate it, guys.
Appreciate you, Adam. You're great. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back live from the CT Sun, right outside their arena, from the Mohegan Sun. We're right outside the Wolf Den. The band has taken a quick break, a little bit of quiet. We're expecting Jen Rosati, the president
of the
CT
fans,
Sun.
man.
We're hoping she shows up here in a little bit.
We'll
be right
fans.
back on your afternoon drive with Rob and Ben.